Welcome to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
So, imagine being handed the keys to the most successful sports franchise in history. But, the engine is completely dismantled.
Just scatter all over the garage floor.
Exactly. You literally only have one mechanic left from the old crew, and you have to race the best team in the world in less than 6 months.
It's a staggering reality.
It really is. And that is exactly what the New Zealand All Blacks are facing right now as they march toward the 2027 World Cup.
Yeah, it's unprecedented.
Right. And before we get too deep into this, make sure you subscribe to the Rugby Obsession channel and newsletter so you never miss out on these conversations.
Highly recommend it.
Today, our mission is to figure out exactly how a world-class team manages this kind of massive internal upheaval, especially while staring down a totally punishing schedule.
And we're going to use the, deeply optimistic perspective of All Blacks legend Dan Carter as our guide.
Right, because his mindset is just fascinating.
It really is. It serves as this ultimate test case for elite sports psychology. We're looking at the foundational mindset of champions here.
Yeah.
When the absolute best in the world face total disruption, they don't view it as a disaster. They see it as a necessary crucible for growth.
Which is wild, right?
Yeah.
It makes Dave Rennie's arrival so jarring because before we even look at the on-pitch schedule, we have to understand the off-field earthquake that just happened.
Oh, absolutely.
Back in January of 2026, New Zealand Rugby, NZR, they made a call that completely subverted their usual playbook.
We burned it down.
They really did. They axed head coach Scott Robertson, and he was only 2 years into a 4-year contract.
Which, for an organization that treats coaching stability as almost a religion, is a massive deviation.
Massive. So they bring in Dave Rennie on a contract running until the 2027 World Cup in Australia. And Rennie didn't just step into the vacuum.
No, he brought an entirely new ecosystem with him.
Right. He cleared house. He brought in Neil Barnes, Tano Umaga, and Mike Blair. And he kept only one single member from Robertson's era.
Forwards coach Jason Ryan.
Yeah, just him. Okay, let's unpack this. It's like changing the CEO and the entire board of directors of a Fortune 500 company right before the biggest product launch of the decade.
That's a great way to put it.
Why keep only Jason Ryan? How does keeping just one specific coach bridge the gap between two totally different regimes?
Well, what's fascinating here is that it comes down to the literal foundation of the sport, the set piece.
Right, the scrum and the line-out.
Exactly. If you change the entire coaching staff, you risk losing that bedrock. By retaining Ryan, Rennie ensures the forward pack's fundamental mechanics remain intact.
Because without that dominance,
The rest of the new structure simply cannot function. I mean, Mike Blair can't implement some dynamic, multi-phase attacking flow if the forwards aren't securing clean ball at the lineout.
that makes sense.
And Tano Umaga cannot build a suffocating midfield defense if the pack is just constantly retreating at the scrum.
So Ryan is basically the anchor,
He provides the physical stability required for Rennie's new tactical nervous system to take hold.
which creates a really intense dynamic within the squad, doesn't it? Because Rennie isn't giving the players a crutch to lean on for the broader game plan.
Not at all.
The old attacking structures, the defensive systems, they are literally out the door.
Gone. And the velocity of this transition means players just can't fall back into old habits.
Right, because the new coaches, Umaga, Barnes, Blair, they have zero allegiance to the way things were done under Robertson.
Exactly. And by stripping everything down to just a single anchor of stability, you force a rapid culture reset. It strips away all the complacency ahead of 2027.
Every training session is an audition.
Completely.
Okay, I hear that, but because of that massive coaching reset, you would logically expect the All Blacks to want a gentle on-ramp, right?
You'd think so.
A few easier test matches to test out their new pod structures or just get the communication flowing. But instead, they're walking straight into an absolute buzzsaw of a schedule.
A total buzzsaw.
And real quick, before we dive into the brutal details of that schedule, I want to remind you to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession channel and newsletter.
Yes, definitely do that.
We also really want to hear from you directly, so drop into the comments right now and share your own thoughts and opinions. Do you think this intense upcoming schedule will make or break this new squad? Let us know.
It's the million-dollar question. Because the reality of this 2026 schedule is unforgiving.
Yeah, they have less than 18 months until the 2027 World Cup kicks off.
And their test schedule is introducing the newly established Nations Championship.
Right, which is huge.
For anyone who might not be looking closely at the global calendar, the Nations Championship isn't just a collection of traditional test matches. It's a rigid, high-stakes points system.
It essentially eliminates the concept of a friendly match.
Exactly. There are no dead rubbers anymore.
Every single game suddenly carries tournament-level pressure. You can't just rest your key players against a mid-tier Northern Hemisphere team to, test out a rookie fly-half.
Because points differential and league standings are constantly on the line.
And layered directly on top of that pressure, they are heading into the rugby's greatest rivalry series against the Springboks later this year.
The #1 ranked team in the world.
The back-to-back world champions.
While trying to solidify a brand new coaching ideology.
So what does this all mean? Let me push back on this strategy for a second. If they stumble early on against the Springboks, won't the pressure on Dave Rennie immediately be just as intense as the pressure that got Robertson fired?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to look at how the coaching staff views this. They see playing the absolute best team in the world immediately as the ultimate diagnostic test.
But what if they go out there and lose by 30 points?
It's entirely possible. But look at the mechanics. If you play lower-ranked teams while implementing a new attacking structure, you might win by 40 points. But you win with flaws.
Right. Individual brilliance kind of masks the structural stuff. Exactly. A brilliant line break from Will Jordan or Artie Savea breaking 3 tackles masks those inefficiencies. The coaches watch the video and see a win, but they miss the fact that their breakdown support was, say, half-second too slow.
Because a Tier 2 nation doesn't punish that half-second delay.
Precisely. But when you play South Africa, they expose everything. Their rush defense forces split-second decision-making.
So Rennie needs this. He needs to prevent false confidence.
He absolutely does. A harsh loss against the Boks provides undeniable, concrete data. They can point to the tape and say, this failed under ultimate pressure, fix it now.
They don't have the luxury of false positives.
No. They need the brutal truth exposed immediately so they can reconstruct it properly for the World Cup.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because it takes a very specific, almost pathological type of player to thrive in that environment.
Without a doubt.
Someone who actually wants their weaknesses exposed on a global stage. Which explains why someone like Dan Carter, arguably the greatest fly-half in history, is looking at this exact scenario and smiling. His perspective provides such a fascinating window into the psychology of elite performance.
We're drawing on an interview Carter recently gave on the DSPN podcast with Martin Devlin, and his positivity is just relentless.
He understands the architecture of a championship team better than almost anyone.
He outright embraces the chaos. He says they are facing the toughest and hardest challenges, and he emphasizes that they do not want an easy road.
He leans into it.
And he points out that they're being thrown into the deep end again, but he adds this crucial caveat, we've got the talent.
Which is true. But what's really interesting is how he views their ranking. Right now, the All Blacks are ranked #2 behind the Springboks.
Which usually makes All Blacks fans twitch.
Right. The expectation is always total dominance. But Carter weaponizes that #2 ranking. He loves it because it forces the entire organization to ask questions.
It strips away the arrogance that can seep into a dominant culture.
Exactly. When you are #1, you tend to protect what you have. You play conservatively. When you are #2, your only option is growth.
It's a massive psychological weapon. By having the Springboks hold the top spot, the All Blacks get to shed the heavy burden of being the defending kings.
They don't have to protect a throne.
No. Instead, they get to play the role of the hungry hunters. And a hungry team with generational talent led by new leadership with nothing to lose. That is a very dangerous entity.
This raises an important question, though, about the nature of talent versus execution. Carter argues that true talent actually requires a deep end to swim in.
You can't coddle it.
Right. If you give elite talent easy schedules, it stagnates. But Carter also pinpoints the exact metric for this new coaching staff's success. It's not about just raw emotional wins.
Because pure adrenaline can win you exactly one game.
Exactly. Which is why Carter emphasizes consistency. He demands they back up their capability week in, week out.
That's the hardest thing in professional sports.
It really is. The culture reset, the brutal schedule, these are mechanisms designed to forge an operational machine that can execute against any defensive scheme every single week.
That systematic consistency is what survives a World Cup knockout stage.
Precisely.
So, as we bring this deep dive home, I want you to think about Dan Carter's mindset in your own life. When the pressure is mounting and your schedule looks impossible, maybe the answer isn't to look for the easy on-ramp.
It rarely is.
Right. Maybe, like Carter suggests, embracing the toughest and hardest challenges, letting yourself be thrown into the deep end, is the ultimate recipe for finding your own consistency.
I love that. And I'll leave you with one final thought to mull over. If being ranked second is the perfect psychological fuel for a rebuilding team, might the Springboks actually be at a disadvantage?
Oh, wow.
Think about it. They are holding that number 1 spot, carrying a massive target on their backs, all while a newly revamped, highly talented all-black squad lurks just behind them, waiting for a mistake.
That dynamic between the hunter and the hunted is going to define the next 18 months of international rugby.
It's going to be incredible to watch.
Surely. And hey, make sure you subscribe to the Rugby Obsession channel and newsletter so we can keep tracking this incredible tactical journey to the 2027 World Cup together. Thank you for listening to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive, and we'll look forward to you listening to our next episode.